Okay. Okay. Do you want to come? Yeah. Okay, yet another change. All our guests have arrived, and we are going to be proceeding with the agenda as we had advertised, and as you see on your screens as well. So I will be handing over to Dr. Aldo Strubel, who will be chairing this part of the session. Thank you, Aldo. Dear esteemed colleagues, close friends, co-workers, thank you very much for your indulgence with our slower start than usual this morning. We very much appreciate your fortitude, and we're very pleased that we can continue then with today's program as planned. We're really pleased to welcome you to this auspicious occasion in the launch and information session of the New Frontiers program, a strategic partnership between the National Research Foundation and South Africa's National Space Agency. My name is Aldo Strubel. I'm the Executive Director for Strategic Partnerships at the National Research Foundation, and it's my pleasure to facilitate this first session of our program today. I'd like to acknowledge Mr. Imran Saluji, the Chief Sector and Business Developer of Sansa, who will facilitate the second session, but also play a formal role on the program as we start with session one. This is a co-hosted event in the true spirit of our partnership. So really on behalf of Dr. Fulfelu Nelmawandu, the CEO of the National Research Foundation, and Ms. Andiswa Lisa, the CEO of Sansa, we're really pleased to have you here and to look at this program that will stimulate innovation and will take us further in the science sector. This program seeks to advance collaboration, cooperation, and innovation in the South African Earth observation community. And this includes, very importantly, both the public and the private sectors. The program is envisaged as a collaborative yet highly competitive program for developing capacities around new capabilities, products, services, and value-added components. There are a number of esteemed guests and participants who will be acknowledged through the talks of the CEOs, and certainly you are very welcome. We also acknowledge the large number of online participants in this hybrid event today. Colleagues, so without further ado, it's really my pleasure to introduce then the first formal speaker, Imran Saluji, the Chief Sector and Business Developer of Sansa. Thank you, Imran. Thank you very much, Aldo. And it's my task at this part of the program to just welcome everybody from Sansa's side. I particularly want to welcome the acting DDG for Technology Innovation at DSI, the Chief Director for Space Science and Technology, Mr. Umulani Budao, as well as the Director for Earth Observations, Mr. Misang Modiole. Also want to welcome the NRF CEO, as well as your team, Dr. Strubel, Dr. Diosi, and Ms. Zodwa Masinga as well from the NRF. And from Sansa's side, a very warm welcome to our acting CEO, Ms. Andiswa Melissa, our Chief Scientist, Dr. Stuart Bernard, Senior Scientist, Narcis Eko, and other Sansa colleagues online. NEOFRONTIERS was born as an idea a few years ago, and it would not have seen the light of day without the strong support and support of the executives and the leaderships of the DSI, Sansa, and NRF. Over the last couple of years, colleagues from both the NRF and Sansa have worked quite tirelessly to get NEOFRONTIERS off the ground. Sansa views its championing of NEOFRONTIERS and today's celebrations of its launch, as well as the celebrations of the first awardees of the NEOFRONTIERS program, as a very important step towards deepening the knowledge base that we have within Earth observations in the country, but also collectively deepening our ability to sustainably position Earth observations as a contributor towards addressing a whole range of societal benefits, from poverty alleviation to the management of our natural resources. It is with this in mind that I think the celebrations that we're going to have today in terms of the launch of this program, of the NEOFRONTIERS program, is I think very welcome. The program, as you can see, is broken up into two portions. One, the launch and of the program and the announcing of the awardees of the first tranche, and then the second part of the program, which we will be looking at, is the launch of the new call and an in-depth look and a deep dive into that as well. We look forward to all your contributions in the discussions around the launch of the new call. Thank you very much. Imran, thank you indeed for the context and the warm welcome, and certainly the acknowledgement of our esteemed facilitators and functionaries in this auspicious program. Colleagues, we are very excited about this partnership. It shows innovation, foresight, it brings the system together and really focuses on truly strategic partnerships in the science system, and more especially between the science councils. And Imran has created that space for us and the context within which this celebration, if you will take place today, but also more in-depth discussions on especially recognition of the esteemed awardees, but also the plans for the future. We welcome a range of key messages to provide support from the leaders of the organization, but also to emphasize the importance of this partnership. Really my pleasure to welcome, therefore, Dr. Fulufelu Nalmawandu, the CEO of the National Research Foundation, for his key remarks. Thank you.
Good morning, colleagues. Good morning, colleagues. That sounds like it. My co-host, the acting CEO of Sansa, Andy Soblisa, welcome. Dr. Maserumule, the acting DDG, the Department of Science and Innovation, welcome as well. I'm not going to go through welcoming everyone individually. I think Imran has done a good job in that regard. So I will just say the esteemed academics and the grant holders and esteemed colleagues, including every one of you, you're welcome, and we're really excited to actually be a part of this session this morning. Let me start by just welcoming all of you to the National Research Foundation. And thank you for joining us today for this prominent partnership and the launch event. As Aldo has mentioned, I think this is something that is very remarkable to actually have this partnership between Sansa and the NRF. The NRF supports many research programs in the Earth observation sector through various instruments and programs that contribute to Earth observation research. I'm not going to spend time reminding everyone about this, but just to name a few, this will include the flagship Global Change Partnership, Global Change Research Program, the Future Earth and the Belmont Forum, the research chairs and the centers of excellence, and the National Equipment Program, amongst many other ones that we facilitate. In addition, and over the years, we have developed the Earth observation infrastructure through the South African Environmental Observation Network, which is a national facility that the NRF hosts. Illustrated by our partnership, both Sansa and the NRF have a critical role in the implementation of the South African Earth Observation Strategy, which is intended to address South Africa's socio-economic and environmental challenges. The synergies between the NEOFRONTIERS program and other programs in the Earth observation sector are specifically by virtue of skills development in funding postgraduate students, as well as national, regional, and international Earth observation research networks, very critical. If you look at our mandate as a NRF, this is something that's very critical for our success. We are therefore very pleased that the NRF can also contribute to this partnership and support the sector at large through our recognized grants management systems and expertise, which are important enablers of a competitive and quality research system with local and international impact. Impact largely emphasized, because if we do things with a view of actually making impact, that's the only way that our true value will then be realized and be visible. The funding partnership between Sansa and the NRF commenced in 2019. And this was through an agreement to fund a research chair, which was just one, in the space weather. 1 year later, this partnership was extended to include funding of research grants that address environmental and economic challenges through Earth observation. I am looking forward to this then growing. If you look at where it began, one research chair, then we sort of moved further, and you look at where we are now, one can always say that it makes more sense for this to even grow further, acting CEO. And I'm particularly pleased by the fact that, and looking at you, CEO, in this matter, that this is a space that's very close to your heart, not only as acting CEO, but also looking at your substantive role within Sansa and the role that you played within the DSI at the time, and all the other things that you've done. So I think this is something that we cannot let it collapse. It's something that we have to actually push forward. So I'm putting pressure on you in that regard. My view on this aspect is that if you look at this partnership between the NRF and Sansa, this is a very, very important partnership. And Dr. Maseromule, I'm looking at you as the acting DDG in this regard, in that as much as entities, we have our respective mandates. One can actually argue that these respective mandates are served better in collaboration. And it makes more sense for us to then collaborate further and further and make sure that we work in unison in addressing some of the key challenges that South Africa faces. And this is just one of the good examples of such. The NRF will continue to support the human capacity development and innovation for the Earth observation community that will contribute to mitigation of the devastating environmental changes. We've seen the floods recently in KZN, amongst other areas where we have issues, and I think we can actually work together to address some of these issues. This will actually include expanding the international partnerships, as well as developing industry partnerships in Earth observation research. One thing that we normally don't talk a lot about is bringing the industrial partnerships into these kind of aspects where we sort of say as government, let's work as government. But I think one cannot over or underemphasize the need of actually bringing industry into this kind of engagements. It is something that I do foresee that this partnership will actually bring forward, where we can say, yes, one step has been met, which is a step of us working together, but how do we bring other stakeholders in addressing some of the gaps so that we can actually work again together with industry, with private sector in addressing the issues that we face as a nation. I won't want to be long. Safe to just say I look forward to the interaction with a number of you after the closure of this session, and to the future engagements in crafting a sustainable strategy in partnership amongst ourselves, as governments, as science councils, with universities and research institutions and private sector, emphasized again. So I'm hoping that we will be able to work together with the grant holders that are going to be, as much as I want to see them as beneficiaries, I see them as ambassadors of this program in actually advancing some of these issues that we are facing in South Africa. With that, I just want to say congratulations in advance to the grant holders, and I thank you all.
CEO, thank you indeed for the kind words of welcome, but also the key messages. Ms. Melissa, especially the fact that this is the start, although it's already quite based of a future, not only among the two agencies, but in the system. Secondly, also the critical role of industry engagement, and the NRF has, I should say, started, but with great success, positioning and partnered within this space. And we certainly would like to take that discussion further. And thirdly, also, although we have a small number of grant holders at this stage, it has been a highly competitive program and really shows the quality and excellence of researchers from a diverse number of institutions that supports our system to take that forward. CEO, thank you very much. Colleagues, really our pleasure, the co-partner, the co-brain, the co-host of this wonderful partnership, acting CEO of Sansa, Ms. Andiswa Melissa. You're very welcome to deliver your key messages.
I feel so short in this podium. I think they should make some that are there so that I can feel a bit tall. The CEO of NRF, Ms. Dr. Nelwa Monde. Thank you very much for such a warm welcome to all of us today. The acting DDG, Dr. Rebecca Masimura, and of course, my partner in crime on where this all started, the Chief Director, Mr. Mudau, and all those who support him who are looking down at this moment whilst I'm looking at them. The Sansa and the NRF management team that has actually made this program possible, and so that we can actually be here today, a full appreciation to you. I quite know the hard work that had to go into putting the frameworks in place, but actually the hard work started to getting the National Treasury to agree that this partnership makes sense and we shouldn't be going for competitive and building new systems when government already has a capability that we can tap into. Ladies and gentlemen, those present and those online, thank you very much for being here today and being part of this celebration with us. So when I started in Sansa about 5 years ago, 2017, October 2017, yes, as a managing director for Earth Observations, we embarked on what we would call getting to know the community afresh from a different perspective, because I knew the community, but from a different, I was a player and now I needed to be something else. So we did a couple of roadshows where we visited government, private sector, as well as the research institutions. And what we were looking for and what we heard was what were the needs on the ground, what were the capabilities that existed within our space sector, and what were the aspirations that the space sector has. But most importantly, what was expected of Sansa within the value chain. We had a couple of things that were said to us at the time. There was a need and an aspiration to have a national space program that one can anchor activities around, but in particular that one can actually anchor growth around, especially when we're talking about the industry. We did hear that we're looking for opportunities to strengthen the existing research capabilities in the country, opportunities to improve the products and services that our private sector was starting to build, as well as some of the entities within government. But most importantly, we're looking for an enabling environment for innovation, for collaboration, and for making sure that we strengthen South Africa's competitive advantage within the global space market. So when we also reflected on the National Earth Observation Space Secretariat, most of you know this as NEOS or SAGO, because this was a secretariat that was established to ensure that there's a coordination among the space community. We made reflections on our own involvement in what we have seen and what we have learned during the duration of that program. We also made reflections in terms of what the AfriGeo program that was established for coordination within the African continent has taught us. Here we looked at the successes, but most importantly, we were looking to say, what is it that is required? If we were to choose one thing that we can put our energies and efforts around to make sure that we strengthen for growth, what would that one thing be? So when we hear all of this and when we include it with our own observations and our own reflections, we then put together the Sansa Earth Observation Strategy. We debated around this as well. Is it a Sansa Earth Observation Strategy? Because there is a National Earth Observation Strategy. But you would know that we are required as government to put up 5-year strategies on top of the bigger strategies that we have, whether it's the decadal plan or the white paper and all of these instruments. So we came up with, in these 5 years, what will Sansa put in place to make sure that we respond to all that we heard? But then again, it was also trying to answer the question, where does Sansa fit in the value chain? I don't know if most people remember this conversation. It's not so big now. I think we've managed, Imran, to answer this question along the lines. We had an answer then that we shared with the community. And our answer was very simple. Sansa is an enabler for the space sector development and growth. We are here to foster and we are here to facilitate the environment for cooperation to occur in the country. I'm going to change that, not for cooperation to occur, for competition to occur. We will not compete with any players in the industry. That's the promise we also made. Sansa will not compete with industry. Sansa will not compete with the research institutions. But what we will do, we will foster co-opetition. When we're talking with competition, we're talking about collaboration, we're talking about cooperation, and we're talking about competitiveness, because we do have to compete if we're going to be building an industry. It's a natural order of things. So how do we do this in a manner that is tangible and also visible for everyone to see? This is what led us to the Research and Development and Innovation Fund. That is what we called it back then. We have since renamed it to NEOFRONTIERS, the New Earth Observation Frontiers. Today, we're launching that initiative. Of course, it would have not been possible just for us to think it and therefore it happens, and for us to put the concept on paper and therefore it happens. What made it successful was that when we walked into the DSI and we said, this is what we have come up with, the department marveled and put 60 million rands for the next 5 years for supporting this program. So a big appreciation to the Department of Science and Technology in this regard. And for the first time, the country actually had a research and innovation grant for space. For years, we've been applying for research grants to the European Commission, Framework Program first, Horizon 2020, now, and most probably there's Horizon 30 or 60 coming up. Those who work in the Earth observations community will even know that within the geo community, NASA extended the NASA Roses program, which is also a research and innovation fund for participation within the geo community. What this means for us is we can also play within the international space and say we have a mechanism that funds our research and innovation within the Earth observation and space arena in the country. We are a player within the global market for the global space market after all. So one of the major principles that we have put for NEOFRONTIERS is to make sure that the competition happens in a mechanism that is beneficial for all. The consortiums are formulated with three pillars. One, there must be government or public sector participation. Secondly, there must be a research institution participation. And thirdly, there must absolutely be private sector participation. Why, you may ask, we're looking for two elements. One, human capital development. And Dr. Nolomandi has spoken quite a lot about this, and NRF would know very well what human capital development means, of course. But also we're looking to make sure that the products and the research that actually happens in the country is taken up by industry, that products and services are actually operationalized rather than being a research PhD or an MSc that sits in a shelf somewhere in a university. Hopefully now you can find it online in the online libraries. But we need this cooperation to make sure one, research is taken up and feeds the industry development on products and services. But the public sector must participate because we need to make sure that the research that's being done, as well as the products and services that are being developed by industry, are actually addressing a need that government has. So the purpose, all of this needs to be fit for purpose. We're not taking away the requirement for fundamental research, no means. Even in that cooperation, fundamental research needs to be informed by something beyond just the dreams and wishes of the research community. And so with this consortium our hope is that the community can start to actually understand the chain in which we're needing to go when we're wanting to develop fit for purpose Earth observation and space applications for our government. I've already mentioned that the partnership between NRF and Sansa is a great indication of leveraging the capabilities and competences that sit within our government entities. It is a pity that we actually have to fight so hard to partner with each other as government entities, because National Treasury makes us do so. Because the first question they say, no, we don't want NRF to be a monopoly. And we're like, a monopoly of what? Research grant management systems and expertise. But the systems and expertise are already sitting there. So what are we supposed to do? Build a lot of these research grants and systems throughout the country. So this balancing between what already exists and ensuring that we optimize the usage of what already exists and competition globally within the procurement process of government is still something that hopefully the current regulations that the National Treasury is looking at is going to give us an opportunity to amend some of the challenges we have. Now, I do want to send an appreciation to those who responded to our first call. And there were teething times with this first call. So we put the call out and then we didn't advertise it so well because we're still cleaning some of the administrative aspects, and then we extended the time, and the NRF was patient throughout all of this. But I think most importantly, you as a community were patient with us throughout all of this. So we fully appreciate that. So today we celebrate the winners from that first call. But the question that Dr. Nolomandi sort of like passed, at least how I read his challenge to me, in terms of where this future goes. So now we're going to be funding these consortiums and this work is going to be done, and then so what? Well, from a Sansa perspective, our future is held with what we call the Space Infrastructure Hub. And the aim with the Space Infrastructure Hub is to actually take the outputs of this research that's going to be done here and operationalize those. What we're seeking with the Space Infrastructure Hub is actually to have a systematic and sustained national space programs in the country that the community can actually depend on and know that we will always have activities that government is running and that they can rally behind, but also tap into for resources to make sure that we advance in the research, but we also advance in developing the products and services that are required to address the national development agendas that we have. I'm going to close on the partnership aspects with NRF. So we do welcome the appointment of the managing director for SION, because we work very closely with SION, Dr. Nelwamonte. We have the South African Earth Observation Systems Portal, SIOS portal, which NRF and the capability sitting at SION has been helping us in the department to develop. So there is, besides the research chair, we can also add that on the activities that we are partnering together. The Future Earth program and the Belmont Forum program are also areas for us that we need to investigate. And I'm looking at the colleagues that are responsible for NEOFRONTIERS, because there are opportunities there that lie for NEOFRONTIERS to grow it further. So, and also align the programs with those. So colleagues, without taking further time, so that we can get to the celebration aspect. Thank you very much for hosting us here today. We fully appreciate it. And also thank you for an understanding, because last time we canceled at the last minute the launch. So I also thank those online. And I do apologize that today we almost canceled because I was almost a no-show. But that was not my fault. It's because we didn't have a space shuttle yet to get me from Cape Town to here. I still dependent on the normal aviation systems to get there from here. So everyone, thank you so much. And I am looking forward to actually meet all the awardees from the first call, and all the best to those who are going to be responding to the second call. Thank you very much.
Ms. Melissa, thank you very, very much for your highly insightful and warm words. And in a sense, you have framed already our way forward, not only with respect to partnership, but also with respect to national engagement, national cooperation, and that international co-opetition aspect that you have mentioned. Our international partners will remain very important. So with the framework programs that Sansa has been highly successful in, with the current Horizon Europe framework, that will remain important. But if I may say so, the NRF also commits additional support, additional close collaboration, especially through the national facilities, to take our partnership further. Highly intrigued by the fact that you mentioned the Future Earth environment, as Flufero also has. You will know that the NRF has recently been awarded the Africa Hub of Future Earth. And we are very, very pleased about that process. It will formally be announced and launched on 24 June with the Sustainability Research and Innovation Conference that is hosted in South Africa this year. And as you know, SRI is a combination of Belmont Forum, Future Earth, and other role players within the sustainability science space. So indeed, we will have a very, very strategic opportunity to really have a continental approach with respect to Earth observation, the role of agencies like Sansa, the NRF, and others, the national facilities, on a truly continental basis. And I think this could probably be our major opportunity, taking already existing collaboration forward. But thank you very much again for your very kind, warm, and strategic words. Colleagues, as the CEOs have indeed indicated, certainly, although our system is small, it is very strong and robust, but it is made robust and competitive through support of the public sector. And our line ministry, the Department of Science and Innovation, line department, Department of Science and Innovation, is always on board, always see the strategic view, and always commit to supporting the agencies going forward. So we're really pleased to have in our midst Dr. Rebecca Maseramule, the acting director, Deputy Director General of DSI, who's been on board with this process right from the beginning, and we welcome you for your key remarks. Thank you, Rebecca.
Good morning. Okay, wake up, everyone. We're here. They actually offered us coffee, so we should all be awake. I'd like to first start up by saying thank you so much to Dr. Nalamondo for the welcome. Our CEO for Sansa, Ms. Andiswa Lisa, Program Director, Mr. Aldo Chauvel, all here today online and in person. And good morning, good afternoon, good evening, just in case we have anyone internationally. I'm well aware of the fact that our Sansa program, it does have international impact. So we probably have people coming in. So I could say that, when I first joined the DSI, I think 5-6 years ago, and I was asking, what about this, what's with this space science technology program? Why is Mr. Humbalani Mudal, why is he always pushing space science and why it's the best in the world? And someone, coined it for me very simply. They said, Rebecca, when you're using Waze or Geo Maps or Google Maps for getting around, you're using satellites. So for me, I learned that basically almost on a weekly basis, I'm using space science technology to get around accurately. And I think for me, it's just like the question is, we're always asking, why are we doing this? If you want to get around accurately, safely, space science technology is doing it for you. So this is something I learned 6 years ago, and it still resonates with me every day, even when I'm coming to these events. But also, I think if you look about the space science program and how critical it's to government's role in terms of meeting our needs, it's only in times where we're going through challenges where we really start to benefit and understand why it's important, so important to have a South African National Space Agency. All right. So even under COVID in June, July 2020, when we needed assistance, we would call the guys Sansa and say, we need to make decisions around the certain following issues very quickly. So, and Sansa always stepped forward to assist us with those decisions, be around, giving grants to spaza shop owners, understanding how the flow of the population was happening and how that impacted on issues of infection. You guys were there. Even in terms of recently, a few weeks ago, you didn't let us down. KZN as government, we're struggling with the response. And then Sansa said, no, we have, we went to a meeting and we knew that Sansa had been assisting on the ground, our situation government and assisting us with decision making. Again, you step forward. So I like to say thank you so much for that. Just really stepping forward and making us understand really how powerful it can to have data sets to assist government in supporting our role of really a capable state. But even further, just in terms of NRF, not leaving you guys out in terms of responding to COVID-19, the data sets, the capabilities that have been created over decades of funding. You can receive funding, but how you spend that funding and account for that, you really don't know about the importance of that until you need to use that resources. And, under COVID, we use a lot of the resources that have been created through the South African Research Chairs, Centers of Excellence to assist with decision making. And so hence, when the two organizations working together, often in my role, even as chief director or even acting DDG, it's always, how do you get the entities to work well together? And you guys are doing it without any type of encouragement. You're just making it happen. So I think this is important because we have two great organizations working together. And I think this will amplify the impact of NEOFRONTIERS because you two are working together. So thank you so much for that. Now, in terms of the context, so I've talked about how when we need things, you guys respond. And thank you for that. But the question is, what about the future? Right, because as a DSI, we're not necessarily working on today, but like you say, we do like to harvest, decades of investment and institutional knowledge into responding. But also, what about the future? So if you think about the NDP, we have millions of jobs which are expected to be created, I think by 2030, and I think 80 to 81% of those jobs are expected to be created by SMEs. So I learned this a few weeks ago at a launch of a incubator when the Minister of Small Business Development was presenting. And I was thinking, these guys have a small name, but really have a big job. And really just looking at the work that you're doing, Sansa, DSI team around the national space case, but then actually taking that ambition and putting it into action through the National Infrastructure Project or Space Infrastructure Project. I think that project will be critical to ensuring that those jobs through SMEs will be created. It's one of the strategic infrastructure projects of government, and really it's critical that as we build back better from COVID-19, that this project works effectively. And I think the NEOFRONTIERS program, if you look at its purpose, it's really around bringing private sector, public sector, as well as academia together towards a common purpose. And I was really happy to see that you're focusing on SMEs around this journey and thinking around localization of our intellectual property and capabilities in a coordinated way. And in further reflection, even in terms of the decadal plan, I mean, space science shows up throughout this decadal plan. If you think about high-tech manufacturing, it's one of the key areas of focus. If you talk about intensifying African cooperation, it shows up in our intensification of African cooperation in the decadal plan. In terms of support of capable states for South Africa, again, we're expecting that in future, especially future disasters, we're expecting because of climate change that you guys will continue to show up. And our role as a DSI is to ensure that you have the skills or you have the resources, be it financial, be it support, to make sure you can always show up in the future. And last but not least, societal grand challenge in terms of the work you're doing in Scion, GEOS, AfriGEOS to ensure that we have the data sets to analyze and understand the impact of climate change and how we can proactively respond to the challenges we're expecting to see. So in terms of this program, the New Earth Observation Frontiers program, it's great to see that it's not, it's taking what you had existing and really repurposing it for the future in a way that responds to, I would say, the issues we're dealing with today, but also the challenges that we're experiencing for the future. It's great to see that we're looking to strengthen the coordination between industry, the Earth observation industry, and the innovation of observation applications and products and services for the local participation in regional and global initiatives. So I think having a competitive funding program is important because you're really not going to know what's out there unless you go out to the sector. And to ensure that it's competitive is ensuring that we're going to continue with the history of excellence that we have in South Africa around our observation. So let's not forget that January this year, we had one of our satellites being launched by SpaceX. So South Africa has a history of excellence in space science and technology. And in part, that's because of the great work of the team at DSI, but also Sansa, NRF, you've been there for the journey. And I think if you look at the objectives of the NEOFRONTIERS Fund, advancing the implementation of our South African Earth observation strategy for addressing our social, economic, and environmental priorities. As we see climate change really starting to have an impact on us, and this could be with changing the weather patterns that affect where we can have economic activity, be it moving, areas that have been, appropriate for certain crops. We need to understand how to use precision farming to do that more effectively. Looking at generating knowledge through our research and collaboration with Earth observation sector, this will be important for bringing private sector and public sector closer together. And really, I think, probably moving into developing a transformed, inclusive, sustainable national science and industrial skills space. So the fact that 3 of your keynote speakers were women is something that hopefully you won't forget about, and you'll be wowed by that. And I think just seeing the passion from your CEO of Sansa, it's obvious that your leadership at the organization is going to take us into the future with passion, and that's really an important part of excellence. But also, I think looking at stimulating coordination, collaboration, cooperation, and competitiveness of the South African Earth observation sector is critical so that we continue to have a global footprint, but also that we ensure that the South African challenges and issues are addressed in a way that makes sense to us. But also, I think in terms of stimulating the development of an innovative Earth observation upstream capabilities and information services and industry downstream are really critical. And I'll say this because we're not going to create jobs unless we're able to implement, unless we're able to benefit from localization. And I think this issue around security of information, we saw, months ago that in terms of, certain challenges in Europe, certain information wasn't available to certain countries. So having that capabilities local are really important for security. But then the last, really looking at opportunities for furthering service in Africa and global markets is critical. So, it's not, we have a regional space center in South Africa. So South Africa's role is actually growing in terms of our services to other countries, locally in Africa. And then I think last but not least, looking at how do we look at our partnerships, AfriGeo, the Group on Earth Observations, GEO, and the Committee on Earth Observation Satellites and other international partnerships. South Africa is a very small country, but in terms of our international engagements, I think we punch above our weight. I believe we play a leadership role in GEO, and we've been doing that for quite some time. So I think this also will support us in the leadership role that we play both regionally and globally. So I'd like to say that really in closing, first, thank you so much to the Sansa, NRF, and DSI for making sure that we're here today to launch this program. A special thank you, of course, to my team, Mr. Humbalani, Modao, Jimmy, and Lasady, for making sure that this process happened. I think, and just what you mentioned, the administrative red tape, as we'll call it, that may have stopped this partnership between NRF and Sansa from happening. But really, it's the team at DSI who writes those submissions, who make the case and ensure that those bottlenecks are smoothed from an administrative point of view. And really, I'm glad that we're able to play our enabling role as government officials to ensure that this partnership was happening and that literally we're here today. I'm not going to give the input on who won the prize because I think that's coming later. It wasn't in my briefing to tell that, but so I do know. So, but I'm excited to really see the new partners coming out, and thank you so much.
Dr. Masaramula, thank you very, very much for your insight and the direction that you have provided. DSI certainly can be regarded as an enabler of a range of successes of South Africa, our system, and internationally. And that is gratefully acknowledged. And the magnificent leadership team that you head and that supports these engagements are truly acknowledged. I want to pick up on two of your aspects that you've mentioned. Number one, like a little misnomer in our system in how public entities like Sansa or the NRF can further support SMEs. The Water Research Commission has good experience and examples of those. I think it is a strategic area which we can expand on to increase that competitiveness. And secondly, the Africa agenda. It cannot be higher, it cannot be stronger. I think both our agencies have proved that. The leadership of DSI really provides that apex example of how we must and should engage. And that is a very strong aspect that we can take forward. One of the enablers in the context of the GEO group and all activities could also be the International Science Council, with a major number of unions and committees that is facilitated by the NRF as the adherence function for South Africa to the ISC, but also to bring that expertise and knowledge together to further amplify the investments that we are already making in the broad space Earth observation environment of the ISC. So I think that will bring a huge advantage for us to take forward. Thank you for your excellent key remarks. Colleagues, we're nearing the end of session one, and that will also conclude my formal role on the program. I would like to, however, acknowledge the presence of the Deputy CEO of Research and Innovation Support and Advancement of the NRF, Dr. Eugene Lottering, in the audience, ultimately, this program resides in his portfolio. He's very aware of the strategic importance of this. And also, of course, senior colleagues from the Directorate, Knowledge Advancement and Support, or CARES, that is driving and implementing this process, and particularly Dr. Josi and Zotwa's excellent support, drive, fortitude, leadership within this wonderful partnership that we have with Sansa. Thank you indeed. Colleagues, let me therefore, all things have been highlighted thus far, but I think the highlight would be now the formal announcement of the awardees. So welcome back, please, Imran Saluji, and thank you indeed for this opportunity and to engage with you.
Thank you. Let me hope I can get the presentation up here. Zodwa, I think I need a password for this. Thank you very much. I hope everybody can see the presentation. It's not coming up as yet. Here. Let's try that again. Is there anybody who can help me with getting this onto the screens? Online, it's on. It's just not here. Okay, there we are. Let's take it. Okay, thank you very much. I think this first part, as Dr. Strubel has indicated, is closing with the announcement of the 2020-2021 awardees. I won't go through the slides, but I think the first couple of slides, I think a lot of the themes that govern and shape what NEOFRONTIERS is has been spoken about by the CEOs and by the acting DDG. The question of cooperation across the system. We're looking at the partnerships between higher education, the science councils, government, as well as SMMEs. Our ability to be able to develop a strong knowledge base that will allow us to be able to transact both nationally and internationally in the Earth observation space. I think one of the things that has not been mentioned is the critical role that the NRF had played in developing an independent review of the entire process, with reviewers from within the system itself looking at the proposals that had come through and making recommendations in terms of those that had been awarded. The NEOFRONTIERS program had calls that were based on two areas. One, support actions, which were short 1 to 2 year type of calls, and the domain development actions, which were longer 2 to 3 year type of programs that were funded. And with that, I think we can, maybe there needs to be a bit of a drum roll here. So what we had done is because the principal investigators were across the country, we had asked them to put together some slides for us to be able to look at so the first awardee for the domain development action for 2021-22, looking at the development of new high-resolution water quality observation capabilities for coastal and estuarine systems. Principal investigator is Dr. Marie Smith from the CSR, the Winning Consortia, which have members from the Department of Forestries, Fisheries and Environment, as well as Scion in them, as well as an SMME called Cyano Lakes, so looking at the issue around water quality. The idea is to provide operational and routine water-based monitoring systems in support of the National Oceans and Coast Information Management System, so water quality elements around that. Okay, there's some of the outputs, open access code repositories looking at operational water quality decision support tools for OSIMs, analysis ready data cubes for satellite derived water quality products. And this is also going to produce one MSc student as well. The second awardee for the Support Action 2021-2022 goes to the Dr. Leslie Gibson as a Principal Investigator at the Agricultural Research Council, and looking at a student, an MSc student at UCT. This involves not only the Agricultural Research Council and the University of Western Cape, but also an SMME called AgriCool, to looking at taking the products and services that are coming out of this into the community itself. So I won't go through all of this and make this, but it's really looking at both commercial and small-scale farmers, providing data and access to market information, looking at the code designs, and also the outcomes, recommendations of data products which can continue to serve via social media and lead to the development of an app. So it's a small support action in terms of a bigger program as well, and one MSc student there. The third awardee is Professor Adrian van Niekerk from University of Stellenbosch, government consortia members being Scion, looking at the primary focus of measurement, modeling and analysis in terrestrial domains. This is a domain development action 2021-1A, the development of new hyperspectral capabilities across aquatic, atmospheric and terrestrial domains. The hyperspectral, looking at hyperspectral data is a new area of focus, not only nationally but internationally, and this is focused on developing our capabilities in that sense as well. In fact, there were two very good proposals in terms of this, in terms of this domain action, and both of them with slightly different focused type of actions were there. So perhaps a round of applause for as well. This will be looking at having to support 2 PhD students within this call as well. The last awardee for this for the first round of the NEOFRONTIERS program was again CSR through Professors Moses Cho, looking at hyperspectral signal processing again for terrestrial, aquatic and atmospheric applications. The focus being here to construct accurate synthetic spectral data from 1D and 3D radiative transfer models. The synthetic spectral data set will allow for near real-time monitoring of changes in ecosystem structure, functions, and in the building of automated systems as well. So 2 PhDs that are coming out from this award as well. Thank you very much, and I think those were the 4 that were awarded. Congratulations to all the awardees. I think that we will be interacting with them through the course of this, and to be able to bring more progress from these to everybody. Thank you very much. Okay, if I can stop sharing this here. Can we maybe take a 5-minute break or do you? Okay, so if we can take a 5-minute break and get back by about 1:15, we will start with the second part of the program then. Sure. Can I display? That going okay? Okay, can we perhaps start again? Okay. Thank you very much, everybody. We're getting towards the business end of this launch session and information session. It's the looking and working through the new call that was published a couple of weeks ago, but this is really an information session as well for us to be able to answer questions from potential awardees or potential submissions that would come into the into the system itself. We're running this through a WebEx or a Zoom webinar type of platform, and I would then please ask everybody to be able to use the chat function on the platform to post their questions, and we will go through those as they come through. The major portion of this is of course the question and answer session around this, and your participation and for that is going to be most welcome. We have, believe it or not, this entire NEOFRONTIERS program was set up and run. The first round of the call was run online, and this is the first time that many of us, both at the NRF and Sansa, are meeting for the first time in person to be able to look at this. So it's very nice to see Zolani in person and other NRF colleagues as well. And Stuart is with us, but however, he's still in Cape Town and will be looking at it. Will be doing his part of the session from Cape Town. So without much further ado, I will call on Stuart, if you can maybe share your screen, and then for you to take us through the launch of the new call and the question and answer session around that. Thank you, Stuart.
All right, thank you very much, Imran. Can you hear me and see my screen?
You are a little faint, if you can speak.
Okay. Hang on a second. I'll do radio DJ. Is that working better? Imran?
It's still a little bit muffled. I don't know if there's any.
Okay. Hang on a second.
Okay, we're getting a message that online is fine. It might just be the room system itself. So please.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay, so it's the volume on your end. All right. So thank you very much. Let me put this into slideshow. So yes, thank you very much. Thank you very much to our institutional leadership for all their very kind words and wise words, and for enabling this. Before I start, I would actually also like to thank the NEOFRONTIERS team, particularly Zolani and Zodwa at the NRF, who've been, it's been a real pleasure working with them and very enabling. I also need to give a call out to Imran, who's played a very large role in actually making this program happen too. So thank you to Imran. And also to Nossi and Nale and the rest of the RAD team at Sansa. So it's very much a joint affair. So what I will do before I go into the calls themselves is look at the kind of strategic landscape that is guiding us in terms of where we think we should be investing in capabilities. And hopefully many of you will recognize this, those who went to the user requirements workshop and the NEOFRONTIERS consultation workshop in December and January. And this is a synthesis of our emerging user requirements from our Space Infrastructure Hub. And we're really using it as a guide to help us figure out how to invest. So you'll see that this is highly multi-thematic, first of all. And what we know is that most users are not interested in single streams of data. They want to be able to combine information and knowledge to look at decision making. And you'll see this has really three main components to it. It's got climate change manifesting in extreme events. On the left, it's got the looking at ecological infrastructure, in other words, natural systems at a variety of time, space, and application domains. And on the right, you'll see looking at more of the human aspect, the built infrastructure, again at many different time and space scales. And the key thing here is really systematic observations. And in the middle, you'll see an IPCC type synthesis looking at combining hazard risk, hazard vulnerability and exposure into risk. So I won't go into any more detail, but it's this kind of large scale conceptual and thematic thinking that's guiding where we think we should be investing. And if we look at how we can break this down, particularly into the kind of modular structure that we need to implement a funding program such as NEOFRONTIERS, we obviously, of course, need to be very cognizant of all of the other activities that are going on, all of the other initiatives, and also be very cognizant of the fact that there is a great deal of variable ownership, if you like, of these capabilities across the different domains. So if we look at our infra-eco type environment, we can see that, first of all, the kind of platforms, the cloud-based platforms that are available, these are examples of Digital Earth Africa and Digital Earth South Africa, but there could be other platforms. That's a key enabling event and something we want to work around. We also want, of course, to look at our own new satellites. So, for example, the hyperspectral proposals that you saw are related to that. We also want to be cognizant, and these are just examples of some of the existing capabilities and where they offer capabilities that can be complemented or built on. So a good example might be, for example, the National Framework for Climate Services. And then these green boxes kind of represent where NEOFRONTIERS could be investing across both the built infrastructure, the ecological infrastructure, being able to exploit new sensors, being able to bring full value to all of that information and transform it into decision-enabling knowledge. And then finally, of course, how that would work with regard to external commercial services and, for example, enabling SMMEs in the private sector. So when I go into the calls, I would just like you to keep this diagram in mind, because that's kind of what's informing the structure and the focus areas of the calls. Now, before I switch into the calls, I'd also like you to think about transformation, because this is something that we need to keep addressing. We are looking for some kind of creative and enabling mechanisms and not to fall back on kind of more quota type systems. So I would ask you to think about this and perhaps even bring up some issues in the Q&A. And these are just some discussion starters idea. You know, could we put in, for example, explicit postdoc or young scientist package leads to support transformation? Should we step further back into the pipeline that has its own complexities? Should we be incentivizing and supporting SMME breakouts, for example, or should we be looking at things like solicited calls for you know, the explicit inclusion of historically disadvantaged institutes? These are just examples to get you thinking about this. So what I'm going to do now is go out of this and actually go into the call framework document to look specifically at the calls. So we have 3 calls for this year. The first of these looks at the development of climate change hazard indices using Digital Earth Africa. You can see this first paragraph of text is effectively summarizing what I have just told you about the infra-eco system, so I'm not going to go into that. And you can see then that the call is actually fairly open. It says, we please need to look at hazards rather than risks, because this is a specific technical term. Risk is a much more integrative technical term from an IPCC perspective. This is very open, as long as it's justified, and obviously some traction, we can get traction on EO. That's the main thing. They have to be highly scalable regionally, and they must incorporate both historical and near real-time data. Multiple hazards is an advantage. And there's one thing that I've forgotten about before I started talking about this, is to please be aware that the majority of the calls that were not successful in the first round were either because the proposers had not closely enough read the calls and were not addressing the key focus areas and requirements, or they weren't fulfilling the consortia criteria. So please, if you want to respond to these calls, read them through very carefully and look at all of the criteria. Okay, so we're asking that the proposals should use DE Africa. We're saying that, of course, we understand it's not only Digital Earth Africa capabilities, and the introduction of other data is seen as a value add, because that looks at interoperable development. Please do not try to take existing platforms and port them into Digital Earth Africa. We're looking to create new capabilities rather than changing the way existing capabilities work. And proposals should identify explicit end users and impact pathways. And then finally, they should be able to at least demonstrate, if you remember the hazard, vulnerability, exposure aspects of risk, to at least demonstrate how they would bring the vulnerability and exposure aspect in. In terms of the consortia, we've said they should include at least one government end user. There should be clear co-design, and we've applied the standard criteria in that you must have at least 3 of the following between government, tertiary education, science councils, and private sector or NPOs. I won't go too much into the detail here. We're obviously looking for publications, code bases in various specific ways, and evidence of masters progressing. This last one here might look a little strange, but this is specifically to take into account that in a 2-year program, a master's by research or by thesis student may not have finished, and that is fine. We've got mechanisms for that. Okay, there are some budgetary aspects. You can see that there are quite explicit constraints around how much can be used for human resource costs for running, and that there should be 2 MSCs at a specific stipend included. And obviously, if you're bringing additional funding in, so much the better. Okay, the next call focuses on high resolution multi-sensor object-based detection for road network monitoring. So in the infra-eco domain, this is looking at built infrastructure, and it's specifically looking at trying to bring AI or realize AI capabilities to detect roads and to provide cohesive road network information. So you can see there are a couple of criteria. We want to use both commercial high resolution optical satellites, such as Spot and WorldView. We also wish to use SAR. This might include Sentinel-1 or TerraSAR X. We're looking for some exploration of most optimal types. We're looking for recommendations on what might be the most successful approaches here. And we're looking for a few criteria about what needs to be addressed. The consortia criteria are similar, and you can see here that we're looking at least one government, either an investment institute, so for example, IDC or DBSA or someone like that, or someone like the SANROL, the roads agency. So there must be a very explicit end user as part of the proposal. And then obviously the consortia criteria as here. The key outputs, you can see similar: publications, code bases, student progress, and similar budgetary allocations with very clear directions as to what kind of costs would be eligible and the master's students involved. So this last one, and this was after a lot of consultation with the community, looks at supporting the multi-sensor campaign. For those of you who are not familiar with it, this is a very organic organization of institutes across public and private, looking at SAR, optical and other sensors development and validation using airborne, spaceborne and in situ measurements. And you'll see the key thing that this proposal, this call is seeking to do is to provide postgraduate support to fully realize the HCD and the science, the R&D aspects of the multi-sensor initiative. We are expecting a single proposal. It must be coherent. It must show that the sum is more than the parts in terms of what it's trying to achieve. And it should look at basically new capabilities, and it makes specific reference to some of the NASA collaborations that are going on. There's some specific aspects about cohort-based approaches, collaborative mechanisms, student community showcases, and you can see on the consortia criteria that this particular call must include all 4 component members in it. So you must have all 4. Similar key outputs, and you can see this has a larger budget over 3 years, and again it has some specific criteria. You'll notice that the human resource cost is a little bit less, and this is because most of the funding we anticipate going into the supporting of these 4 masters and 4 doctoral students. Okay, so I think I am going to stop it there and allow Zodwa to talk to you about NRF Connect and the actual mechanisms about how you support, how you actually submit your proposals, and then we can open for the Q&A session. So thanks very much.
Thank you, Stuart. Good morning, colleagues. My name is Zodwa Masinga. As have been indicated, I'm trying to share my screen for my presentation. All right. I can't seem to find it now. Excuse me, please give me a second. Okay, so I think that I have managed, and those that are online can see my presentation. So as you may be well aware that the NRF has migrated from NRF submissions online. We are now using NRF Connect, and we thought for those that haven't applied as yet, and since the call has been extended, we thought let us just do a brief presentation to try and assist you on where you will be able to submit the applications for this call that has been explained and the program that we are presenting today. So there is the link, and I think that you can find it on the system or on the web when you search NRF Connect. And those that are not NRF staff members, which is the people that will be applying on the system, you need to have an open research and contributor ID, which is known as an Orchard ID. If you do not have it, you will be able to also register for it before you register on our NRF Connect system. So if you already have an Orchard account, you have an option of just using your email address and the profile that you have on your Orchard. It also allows that you sync your CV that you had on the NRF submissions online to this new NRF Connect system. And for those, as I said, that have not registered for an Orchard account, you're more than welcome to go to the NRF Connect page, and on it you'll be able to say register for Orchard. And when you do that, it will give you the processes that you are to follow in order for you to have an Orchard account. If it so happens that you may have an Orchard account and you may have forgot your login details, it will also guide you on how to retrieve those details so that you can be linked to the NRF Connect system. And then when you go onto the home page, this is what you will see. You will see the applications that are currently open. And in this case, we'll be looking at the NEOFRONTIERS call, which is support action or domain action that you can apply for. If you have challenges on the NRF Connect system, I think that I'm mostly your first line of contact. If you have framework queries, you're more than welcome to contact myself. And we have Dr. Josie, who's our director, should you wish to have more information that I cannot respond to, which 99% of the time I'll be able to assist. And then you can refer to Dr. Josie. And then we have Betsy De Beer, who's responsible for the NRF Connect system queries if you need any challenges or if you meet any challenges on the system. So after this, and if when you try to register on the system, please feel free to contact the details as indicated above, and then you will be able to log onto the system. How you apply, you will find the information that is there from what is expected from the call, the requirements that have been indicated by Stuart that you need to respond to, and that will be able to guide you on how you write your proposal. Good luck and all the best. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Sodwa. There's one question. I think that we can open it up now to questions and answers, and we'll try for us to be able to try and respond to some of the questions that participants might want to pose. The first question that we have here is from Lindani. Can't see the surname, but the question says, good day, my question is the new system going to be improved or updated? The reason I'm asking it is because it is a mammoth task to do some things, that is selecting one's institutions, etc. One has to go through the whole list. Also selecting an approver can be a task. I think maybe this is something that the NRF might want to take.
Colleagues, yes, I think we must just be mindful also of the type of support that your institutions provide through the research officers, but especially through the designated authorities. So the system is relatively simple to use, although there are still components which are somewhat onerous. But this would not be the first time that you apply through the NRF. It might, of course, be the first time that you will use NRF Connect to apply through the NRF. So if there are technicalities or information missing, Zatwa has provided the details that are necessary to get assistance or additional information. But at the end, yes, there are many calls on the system. You'll have to look specifically for this one. But please, as a first entrance, use your designated authority at the university. And of course, the NRF also stands ready to assist.
Thank you. Thank you, Aldo. Question from Melanie Luckvogel. What is the submission deadline?
So the applicant deadline is the 11th of July, and the institutional deadline, I think Zod will have to answer that, is about 2 weeks afterwards, I think.
It's a week later.
A week later, okay. But the key one is the applicant deadline, which is the 11th of July. And you have to submit through your institutions, please.
And thank you, Stuart. And just to put a reminder that we also have the issues of the internal closing date. So even though the closing date is on the 11th of July, but it may so happen that your institution will have a day or a week before the closing date in order to allow them to vent the applications that you guys have submitted. So just please, as Aldo has mentioned, speak to the designated authority. They will be able to guide you on the exact date. Thank you.
Thank you very much. There's a question from Jaco. For the roads action, there's a limitation of 240,000 on running costs. Once HR, bursaries, and science engagement costs are added, there is an unspecified category of budget available. Could you please elaborate on what that is intended for? Could, for example, travel mobility be included here, or would that fall under running costs? Would the purchase, rental of storage and computing facilities also fall under running costs, and could that be considered as equipment? Thank you.
Okay, should I go?
Yeah, please.
The running costs actually exclude equipment, but includes everything else, such as traveling, workshops, and consultations. But please follow the application template as indicated, because the equipment has got a different category. And running cost, whatever you wish to add, you just motivate what that expense or item is in the running cost. Thank you.
Thank you, Zolani. I don't see any other questions coming through, colleagues. Any further questions with us? Okay. Put your mic. Just introduce yourself.
Okay, Abel Ramuelo from University of Pretoria. I saw you mention co-funding. Could you comment a bit on that one? Is it a requirement, or is just something that could give you an opportunity to get, the funding? Thanks.
So thanks, Abel. Oh, sorry. Imran, please go for it.
I was just going to repeat the question. Just carry on, Stuart.
Yeah, so I think you'll see in the framework document that it suggests that it would, it would strengthen your proposal to bring additional funding in, but it's not critical. So, if you can show that you're kind of leveraging it, and there will be, for example, additional students associated with it, then obviously upon review, that should gain you a little bit of extra leverage. Does that answer your question well enough, Abel?
Yes, thanks.
There's a question from Inga Fabrice Rotelli. Can university staff take salaries from the funding amounts?
So Zolani might, and Zodwa might also wish to comment. I'll comment from a Sansa perspective first. You can see that we talk about human resource costs And, and this implies the use of a full cost model. So I think the short answer is yes, but it must be justifiable. So in other words, if you're submitting an HR cost that is way above and beyond the work indicated in the work package and the necessary work, then that will not be seen as appropriate. Zolani and Zadwa, I don't know if you want to comment any further.
If I may add, it's possible and it's doable, but we, as the NRF, we don't necessarily allow academics or researchers who are employed by academic institutions to claim the salaries. The universities normally pay those salaries, but in cases where special skills are required and they are not present in the research team, the grant holder may appoint a consultant, may appoint a specialist, a technical person to assist in the areas that they are not that they don't have expertise in. Thank you.
Thank you. I think that there's a follow-up question to that before I get to Melanie and Jaco's questions. It says, but research institutions such as CSIR could do such a claim. The question is?
Yes, CSIR normally does the claim even in other programs. So it is allowed to them because they've got a different kind of setting to the universities. They have to claim their salaries from the projects that they are involved in.
Next question from Melanie Luck. Will the student bursaries be deducted from the running costs?
Yes, the total funding is for everything, including the student bursaries.
From Jacob Kem, for a 2-year project, is there an option to carry over funding into a 3rd year, or must all the funding be spent within the 2 years?
Yes, now we have what we call carry forwards, which is something that the NRF is looking at in minimizing. In the last year of the project, the grant holders are allowed to carry forward a portion of the amount for those activities that could not happen or be concluded in that last year. And it's normally to a maximum of 6 months, not beyond that. And then we take back the funding if it's not spent after 6 months. But as I said, the policy is being looked at whether it would continue as is. We encourage researchers to do the work in the specified period. Thank you.
Thank you, Solani. There are no other open questions online. Maybe, I don't know if there's any from the audience here. No. Stuart, I think that we've, and Zodwa, I think through your presentations, you've provided a very clear picture of the call. There aren't too many questions, but of course there's always opportunity for follow-up questions through and clarifications that come through the email addresses and contact details of those that are supplied on the call, text, as well as the presentation that Zodwa made. The presentations from this session would also be made available to everybody on the panel or participating in this webinar through the Sansa website, as well as NRF channels as well.
So, sorry, Imran.
Carry on, Stuart.
So I was just going to say, thanks very much. You know, we are able to talk to you. If you have questions around the actual submission process or some of the funding processes, then please direct those to Zodwa. If you have an idea for a proposal and would like to see if it's within scope and need some advice, then, you know, please contact me, and I'd rather talk to potential applicants early to, you know, what we don't want is people spending a huge amount of time preparing a proposal that might be out of scope. So, you know, the door is open. Please talk to us if you want to check on specific issues.
Thank you very much, Stuart. Zodwa, I don't know if you have any last minute or last comments.
No, I'm okay. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And then it's for me to hand over to Zolani to do the closing. Thank you.
Good afternoon, colleagues. The acting DDG, Dr. Masarumule, the NRF CEO, Dr. Nulamondo, Chief Director, DSI, Mr. Mudau, and in absentia, Ms. Mlise, the CEO of the Sansa. And greetings to you all, colleagues. Now I've got three issues I want to raise or emphasize that were sort of presented by the key speakers. And actually, firstly, before I go there, I would like to introduce the facilitator. Normally, facilitators are not introduced and they end up being forgotten, even though they are the most important people in the program. Dr. Aldo Strubel is an executive director for partnerships and is an acting executive director for Knowledge Advancement and Support Directorate, which manages NEOFRONTIERS. Through his leadership, we've managed to get to this stage of the program, and we're hoping that the program will grow and other initiatives such as industry international partnerships will also be formed. Now coming to the key issues that I would like to highlight for today's event is what the main key speakers have actually emphasized on, and they were synonymous in these areas. And Dr. Strubel actually summarized very well the key aspects of the programs and the keynote speakers. One of the areas is the knowledge, technology, innovation, and human capital development. These programs actually vested in those areas. We need to develop the knowledge in the Earth observation space. And fortunately at the NRF, as Dr. Nelomondo has indicated, we've got key projects and programs that are big and well-funded that are in the knowledge development space, such as global change and others. The South African Earth Observation Strategy is one key important strategy that we need to always reflect on. And I know many stakeholders, including academics, don't have time to look at strategy, but the enablers and the developers of these strategies, as indicated by Sansa, by DSI, there's been a consultation with the community, with the society in developing these strategies. And we would like to extend actually your participation in terms of implementation of these strategies. The last aspect is the partnerships. All the key speakers, they've emphasized the importance of partnerships in terms of achieving the strategic objectives of NEOFRONTIERS, in terms of achieving the strategic objectives of developing solutions in the Earth observation space. And I would like actually to emphasize what Imran has indicated, that and actually I think Dr. Masarumule, that we need to celebrate this milestone. This has been a long time coming, and it came to this due to a lot of hard work of the enablers such as DSI, Sansa, the NRF, and other stakeholders, which is including universities and private entities. And we need to nurture these partnerships and actually sort of advise when necessary, because the enablers and the facilitators of these strategies and the developers of these strategies, such as government, cannot do these things without the information that comes from the society, from the community, and in particular, in this case, the Earth observation community. So I would like to applaud you and actually invite you at the same time to continue to sort of agitate us in terms of your needs and inform us where we're not meeting your needs, so that we can look at what we're providing and prepare a better sort of options that will suit your needs. I would like to thank the DSI, actually, DDG, for coming, the Chief Director, Mr. Mudau, as well, DDG, excuse me, and the Chief Director, Mr. Mudau, the CEOs of the NRF and Sansa, and actually my partners in crime, Imran and Stuart, and not forgetting Nosiseko. She's always in the background, but her work is noticed in these type of programs. And internally at the NRF, Zodwa has been very instrumental and supportive in terms of ensuring that everything happens. Open the call when you're supposed to open the call, and everyone get the answers that they need in terms of responding to those calls. And not forgetting Zamokuhle, who has been helping in organizing this event and helping us with the other administrative issues as well. And as I've mentioned, Dr. Strubel has been a very supportive in this endeavor and in the development of this program, not only as an acting executive of CAS, but also as an executive of the National Research Foundation. Lastly, the event could not have been this successful without Kumbulani, who is a marketing person for the Sansa. Thank you, Kumbulani. Actually, we learned a lot in terms of some of the things we had to do, and also the NRF communications team for their support. Thank you everyone for coming, and please send us any challenges that you're experiencing with the system, as Zodwa has alluded. Send the emails to Betty for system challenges, and for framework, please send them to me. And for technical issues, send them to Stuart and Imran, because they are the technical experts in this. So this is a partnership in a program. We don't just, as NRF, run the administrative of the call. We run it in partnership with Sansa. Thank you everyone for coming.
Thank you very much. And with that, I'd like to close the workshop. Thank you very much for your participation, and we're looking forward to receiving all of those submissions in support of the NEOFRONTIERS program. Very exciting new development in the Earth observation ecosystem in South Africa. Thank you very much, and go well.
Thank you.
For this one, yeah, but for the side. I'm coming to the office. The issue was still here. We went to yeah. No, the two ones, the two babies. She's breeding the eggs from I don't know how she's breeding the eggs there. Yeah, but I mean, there's nothing that says you can't steal your information. But apparently she's been using it. Oh, yeah. Can you share those?